Welcome. This is my channel, James Johnson's channel. This is my mom, LaDonna, and we're going to talk. We're talking about Game of Thrones: A Song of Ice and Fire. We've read the first 5 books, and we've seen the 5th season up to episode 8. And in this particular, and we talk about spoilers and stuff like that if you haven't seen our videos. So if you don't want that, careful. And also we talk about theories. So it's kind of our gig. And this particular video, we're going to talk about mainly Sansa and Dany, and how similar their storylines are, the different paths they've treaded, but the similar themes and literally the situations they've been in. Does anyone come to mind? And we're doing this off the cuff. We didn't discuss this beforehand. We did like a month and a half ago. But what comes to mind first?
Well, you know, we started talking about this a couple weeks ago, at least. You know, Dany and Sansa have a whole lot of similar journeys that they have gone on. Both of them are ostensibly princesses of incredibly powerful and lengthy houses.
True.
The Starks more so, in the sense of a pure Stark line. They were kings in the North for thousands of years.
True.
Until the Field of Fire came. So Sansa is the first princess. You know, if primogeniture in Westeros worked without respect to gender, in other words, who could ascend to the throne by age, not sex, Sansa could theoretically be the heir to Winterfell.
Because Robb's dead and she's the next eldest.
Next eldest. Dany is the daughter of a very noble, fairly long-term, at least 300 years on Westeros, right, when the Targaryens came over. And of course, if the Targaryens are derived from the Old Valyria, which we know they are, then that ostensibly could have gone on for as many thousands of years as the Starks.
Sure.
So both of them are close to the same age. I think Sansa is slightly behind her insofar as being a little bit more prepubescent, maybe a year or two, right?
Not anymore. Are you talking about the beginning?
At the very beginning. Let's go from the beginning. Sansa's not become, well, she's never reached puberty yet in the very beginning. She's a little bit younger.
And we never see Dany's period. We just kind of start knowing that she can have children.
We start knowing she can be wed, which in the rules of this particular continent
Can't happen until you're
menstruation.
capable of having children.
Yeah. So they're close in age, maybe a year and a half apart.
I can add another thing. Do you want to continue on that particular thread? We'll just bounce back and forth.
Yeah. But so they start basically about the same age. Dany a little bit ahead of her, which is interesting because I think Martin did it so we'd be thrown off a little bit about the parallels between them.
Agreed. One huge parallel between them. So they came from the same house, strong households. Ancient and strong households. There's also the fact that both of them have had multiple lovers / marriages, weddings. Sansa was initially supposed to marry Joffrey, and then she was forced to marry Tyrion. There's the idea that she's married the Hound because he puts his cloak on her, and because of the scene in the bedroom
at
Blackwater. And she's obviously married Ramsay in the TV show, which I think we are getting to in the books. And because of the parallels with Jane Poole's situation and what Sansa's going to, it's easy to feel like that's not. They're just going ahead. They're pretending. They're doing a different storyline, basically.
I think they just consolidate it.
I think that the reason, and I don't know this, the reason we got Jane Poole was because Martin is building to Sansa being the one that Ramsay's wed to,
right.
And it just hasn't happened yet.
That's
now
right.
We know their motivations for doing it, but so now she's married to him, and mirroring that with Dany, who's had multiple lovers, and
Sansa thought she was going to have Loras too, and it was a broken engagement.
True.
So.
And they were both raped. Even though, no, yes, they were. I know, yeah, Dany went ahead with it and she played along, but she didn't want to be in that situation. She wanted to have sex with him.
Yeah, but Call asked her on her honeymoon. He kind of asked her if it was okay.
He can't speak.
In the books, it was much less of that kind of scene.
I think it's only because I don't disagree with in Dany's mind that it's not rapey, but that's only because she's been convinced that this is what she's supposed to do and that she has no choice in the matter, so she's going to go along with it the way that women are supposed to be trained in this old society.
True, and Sansa as well. But you can also argue, James, if I go on your side, even if she hadn't agreed that honeymoon night, it would have happened sooner or later. She's thrown out into the wasteland with him. She's his wife. And sooner or later, he would have said, enough is enough. We're doing it.
And even though Dany has had her period, presumably by the beginning of this, they both do start out the storyline being timid, typical female roles or typical female positions in the society that's supposed. The way the tradition says that women should be acting, which is obviously not real. I mean, the way you talk about old medieval mythology or medieval stories, women are depicted as being these flowery creatures, but we know that not all of them were, and that some of them fell forced into it. But the point I'm getting at, hold up, I feel like you're interrupting me.
No, I'm going to get my thoughts together.
All right. They both start out in those roles, and they both are slowly getting out of them. Dany gets out of them all right, so this is just my theory, and she has now ultimately disagreed with me. She disagreed with me initially, then I convinced her I was right. Now she's back against me because of the things the show has said, but I still think I'm right. I think Sansa was ultimately the one that put the poison in Joffrey's
thing. Oh, God, let's not go that far.
Hold up, yes. Okay. If that's true, just the way we play this game, my mom and I talking to each other, is we try to tell somebody our theory, and the other person has to pretend that it's true and what comes from that, and then we abandon them or choose them, and we often don't do it well. We end up discounting each other from the get-go. But if you presume that Sansa, that this jewel fell off, she picks it up, and she's gotten, or she in the books, she pulls it out of her thing. She's kind of gotten poisoned in the books, in the TV show. Either way, she makes this random decision to say, I hope he fucking chokes on it, and puts it in there, and then he ends up dying. If that is what happened, because she obviously had no idea it was poison, then it would have seemed like magic to her. Like it was just the luck. She prayed. It was her own will. It was magic, and that would be the moment in the books, or the TV show at least, that she starts to become her own person, to manipulate the world. In the same way, when Dany does that, when she finally realizes she's the one, is when she survives the fire, which seems like a miracle, a magical thing too. And I think that those parallels are worth considering. The idea that something seemingly unexplainable to both of these characters drives them to become independent, strong people. Not saying that that's definitely happened, but it's something to consider.
It could be. I kind of want to go
really
slowly with their progression, like scene by scene. You can do it any way you want to. But let's go time-wise with them. So Dany is trained through Viserys, her older brother, to be submissive to him and to believe everything he has told her about her family history. Now, Sansa has not been trained to be submissive to a megalomaniac, but she has been trained to be submissive in terms of taking a very domestic role within the customs of Westeros in general. I'm not saying that Catelyn, her mother, was a role model for submission per se, but submission to the cultural means and methods, like being married to a house for particular power. It might not be what they want, but historically they're trained to do this, that is for the family good. So you've got those forces that are similar but a little bit different. Sansa's is kind of fairy tale-ish in the sense that she believes in knights and damsels and all that kind of thing. Dany's is a little different because she's been on the run for 13 years with Viserys. So she still ascribes to the history of her house and what she is supposed to be destined to be, or at least to be the sister of Viserys and continue to get back and sit the throne. So she still has a historical fantasy kind of going on in her mind. And I've said for a long time that I don't think that was Dany's true destiny anyway, that Viserys put a lot in her mind to get her to meld with him to take the throne. But I'm still not so sure Dany really wants it. Dany has talked about that red door for a long time, whatever it is, and it sure wasn't the Iron Throne. Then, I'm going to let you talk in just a second.
You're good.
Then, Joffrey rides in town with his father and mother to Winterfell, and she's enamored just by looks, and that she thinks he's cute in a teenage, if I might say, Justin Bieberish kind of way. She doesn't know his true personality. Whereas Dany is contrasted with that with her lover, who's fierce, a warrior, and she's scared to death of him. And he doesn't take her to a magical kingdom like King's Landing. At least that's what Sansa thinks of it. He takes her into a wasteland. And despite the fact that she's fearful of him, that he's huge and physical, and she doesn't even know the language, she grows to love him. And I think we're going to see that parallel with Sansa and the Hound later.
Then I would play on that a little bit further, because in the theory, I think that Dany is going to end up with the Night's King. The Night's King's going to finally offer her all the things she could want. And
Sansa may be involved in that too, because it's so close.
It's possible. And as a result, you just made me lose my train of thought.
Sorry.
So Dany ends up with the Night's King, who is this person who can give her everything she wants, in my opinion. He is I talked about it in a previous video, but he provides her all the things her other significant others had provided her. Viserys has the bloodline. He's got a bloodline. Drogo is a badass that could kill anybody who fights him. So is the Night's King. The guy from Karth has something secret and hidden that is a beautiful thing that makes him more powerful than anything, and I think he does. The Night's King has that in some
illusion.
Kind of, I don't think it is an illusion.
But that's a contrast.
True. What's his name? His dog.
Zaxo Zarandor.
Zaxo has his hidden thing that's not real, and the Night's King is until it's shown. You wouldn't believe it until you see it. And then there's Daario, who's the sex god, and if the Night's King can get inside her mind, then he can give her all of those lovers, literally, by making her think they are, but also please her in whatever way. I also think the Night's King doesn't have a penis, which adds something. They also can't have children, arguably.
Because of the castrations thing.
I think the Night's King was castrated, and that's a theme, and also
banishment.
And also that she can't have children. I don't think she'll ever have children. No. Dany. But the idea that she gets all the things she wants from this particular, and then Hisdar, who's the political thing, which Night's King is too, because it's the ultimate choice that gives her all the things. I want to break the wheel. Well, this is one way to break the wheel. Sansa, if she has the Hound, and I think he'll die before the end, but I think they'll have each other. For one, the most beautiful love moment we have will be between them, and then the Hound will go off to fight the just fight because he's a true knight, and he'll kill the Night's King's original body. I'm getting too specific, but ultimately die. And the Night's King continues, but the Hound dies doing an honorable thing, leaving her without her lover. So bittersweet, but the idea that they both have true loves out there is important. They also both have thralls. Not yet, but Sansa is arguably making Reek into I'm at my brother's house. He finally had his baby. So they have a dog who was abused and was slowly brought out of it and is still extremely timid, but holy crap, that dog loves them. So in the same way, if Reek is pulled out of this abusive relationship by Sansa, then she's got a thrall in him, somebody who will do her bidding and that she treats with kindness. And then Dany's is Jorah. Jorah will do literally anything for Dany. He would die for her. It's like an ant. You can take an ant and you can move it all the way across the oceans, but its entire purpose until it dies will be to find the queen. And cast out 1,000,000 times, he doesn't care. He is her thrall, and he'll be the one who comes to her and says, just let me fight for you. Just let me fight for you. That's all I want. And he literally, in the most recent episode, makes himself a slave again in order to fight for her, even though he's been kicked out. She's told him, don't presume to touch me, speak to me, call me Khaleesi. You don't have an existence unless I allow it. And he's willing to do it, and I think that's a good parallel too. What you got next?
I'm going to go back and do mine time-wise. because that's the way I do it in my brain.
You're not really doing it time-wise, by the way. I don't know if you know.
Well, okay. Just let me do it my way.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking to whether or not Sansa poisoned Joffrey, she was involved in the event, whether she liked it or not, whether she picked the jewel up or not.
Because she was there?
Because she was there.
Okay.
Whether it was an intentional thing or not, I don't think she had access to poison except for Lady Olenna and Littlefinger's plans. But regardless of that, doesn't matter what we believe. There was poison involved in her storyline. There is poison involved in Dany's storyline too.
True.
When either his Dar, and in the books it's not quite, we're not quite sure whether Shakaz did it or his Dar. I think in the show they've gotten rid of Shakaz, so they're going to leave it on his Dar. Did the poison locust. So we've got poison in both of their stories. As they move along in the story, we know that Dany is going to have to leave and go into the Waste again to decide what she's going to do. I mean, the spoiler, folks, spoiler review. You know, when Drogon takes her away, she's got to go out and find herself again. Similarly, Sansa's doing the same thing soon in the books, and we're seeing it happen before our eyes visually in the show.
True.
Where nobody's going to save you. You have got to help yourself. Other people may help you, but you've got to find yourself, who your real self is, and you've got to help yourself in this situation. I think those parallels can't be denied. Now, I think that Dany is going to end up going back to Vostoth Rack, and I think there's going to be some wise women who help her, and finally we get some women. And if you don't remember, Vostoth Rack is there's really not a city for the Dothraki, but when the Khals die, their wives go to this place and are revered. You saw them in the hut when Dany ate the horse's heart.
I'm pretty sure Viserys gets killed.
Yeah, that same place.
Uh-huh.
Same place.
It's also where they get married. No, it's not.
No, that was at Pentos.
It's where she eats the heart.
I said that just a second ago.
Okay, yeah.
But, so they both have these independent journeys to get back to who they really are, without respect to what any cultural rules were, but who they really are. And both are sent off into different journeys on it.
It kills me that you even used that phrase.
Which?
I just want to put that out. What they really are. They all what they are. Is Reek not what he is?
Well, we're only talking about Dany right now and Sansa.
But...
Okay, let's just try to stay with them.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're both queens trying to take back their thrones. Whether it's Sansa with Winterfell or it's Dany with King's Landing, which, to be perfectly honest, I don't think there's going to be much left standing at King's Landing. But, so we've got these girls doing this, these young women now. Now, Dany has had a child that died. And by all accounts, she probably had a miscarriage in the wasteland. There's an argument that she was just sick because of berries, but I think it was a miscarriage. She can't hold another child to term anymore. Her dragons are her children. Whereas Sansa, all the visions or her dreams we've seen indicate she's going to have some children. I mean, she says she dreams of puppies on her lap. Which is interesting because Dany's got 3 dragon babies and Sansa's got 3 kind of wolf babies, except these are real babies. And I think that she's going to have them with the Hound.
I don't think they're all hers. I think maybe one of them, or maybe 2 twins. There's going to be some twins at the end of this,
baby.
Or maybe more. But the idea of her being wolfy means that she could have multiple. But to me, she has 1, maybe 2, and then other people have some, and she's got her John's kids on her lap. Maybe Rickon's.
Could be. But the fact that those dreams were intermeshed with the Hound, and for those people who've not read the books, while she's up at the Vale, she has a dream that Marillion, who's a singer at the...
Sansa.
That Sansa is at the Vale. She has a dream that Marillion gets in bed with her. He was a singer. He's been left out of the show. He was put in early and killed, but he was at the Vale. Gets in the bed with her, and she doesn't like him. She thinks he's obnoxious. Then it turns into Tyrion getting in bed with her, and then it becomes the Hound.
I don't think it actually states the Hound.
It does, because that's when she starts thinking about the Unkiss again.
Hold up. That doesn't prove your point.
No, it doesn't.
Hear me out. It's my opinion that it doesn't actually state it's the Hound. It just kind of describes the situation she was in with the Hound and implies it's the Hound. Maybe I'm wrong.
It says the Hound.
Okay.
It really does. So we've got that really kind of, we're seeing the sexuality of Dany played out, but Sansa's is submerged. And again, she's been about a year and a half younger, and they're both young girls. But they're both getting kind of parallel as Sansa grows up. And at a certain point, it doesn't really matter how old you are. You're all adults. Now, if I can also remind folks or tell people who've not read the books, one of the children, babies on her, pups on her lap, as they describe them, looks like Arya. And that relationship between the Hound on the road trip with Arya is asked, and the Hound are asked many times, is that your son?
But Jon is also said to look like Arya.
Yes, that's correct, too. But I think James and I have a difference about it, but I'm going to go strictly from the book. I think Arya's too young at the end of this to have any child.
I think Arya's dead by the end of this, at least her body. Her mind will survive in another woman's body.
Well, I don't think she has a child at all that survives her. She's too young in the books to do it by the end. But at any rate, we're sticking on Dany and Sansa. So they're on this parallel journey. Now, we know that Ramsay gets put with fake Arya, and I think that was the precursor to him really being placed with Sansa in the books later. I think they've just merged lines there so they could consolidate stories. So basically, we've got two girls who are kind of doing the same thing. Now, remember, James talked about Jorah being kind of relentless and completely loyal insofar as his desire to protect Dany. The Hound is too. We just haven't seen him in a while. We all know where he is. But he's going to reemerge. And I think he and Brienne are going to actually meet again. And I think this time we see him. There is a road trip between Brienne and Sansa, and then, this is my theory, please.
What is your theory?
And then she's going to end up handing Sansa off to the Hound who comes to find her. And I think it's really interesting because this interaction is going to be almost the reverse of what happened in the show.
That's interesting.
And that this time, instead of Arya looking back between them, because the Hound and Brienne are still going to go, are we going to fight again? And Sansa's going to go, you guys are both my friends. Stop. And Brienne, and I think the Hound's going to say, where are you taking her? And Brienne's going to say, there is no safe place. He's going to take her to Quiet Isle. And Brienne's going to go off and try to find the boys. Stop shaking your head. It's showing me that you don't agree. You can talk about your theory in a minute.
I want them to know I don't agree. You can continue.
Well, okay. And I think that she's going to go off into the Riverlands to try to find the boys in the show, which is going to consolidate some lines, and that's when she's going to be taken by Lady Stoneheart. And I do think she's showing back up, and so does James.
Absolutely.
I but if you see that we're getting a lot of the same things with these women.
Agreed. And the difference in their power is important, in my opinion. Dany's power comes from her confidence, and her confidence comes from the dragons, or came from the dragons. It's developed separately. Sansa has not so much confidence as apathy to potential consequences, to the extent that she's willing to suffer whatever she has to suffer. But at the same time, she is willing to manipulate it. She's willing to put, and we're building to this in the books. We have not really gotten to it yet, but she is exerting her power over the world with a kind of intention, but willing to take risks, which is what you have to do if you're going to be this kind of gambler, sort of manipulator. You have to take risks. This is what Littlefinger says. But by taking the risks, you are possibly going to suffer greatly. But she's been through so much, especially after Ramsay. I don't think she gives a fuck anymore.
Like Tyrion.
Good point. Well, Tyrion's more suicidal. Hers is more. I don't think suicide occurred to her. But Dany, on the other hand, Sansa's seems more earned. Sansa's is more earned, whereas Dany's is more
entitlement.
Entitlement, quite literally. And that was the beauty of putting Viserys in the. And I've said this before. That was the reason that we had to have Viserys as a character, because by having Viserys be this asshole who thinks he's entitled and he treats his little sister like shit, his sister is meek. that when he is killed, because his sister has slowly become more confident, he's killed, then when his sister says, I'm the one, we go, yeah, girl, get it, you're the one. And then when the magic happens, we go, well, maybe she is the one, in the kind of mythos, fantasy sort of way. And never really, and even now, even the way she is now, making the choices she is, we never really think, yeah, we do. But it's not overtly obvious that she is a form of Viserys. I got a couple more things, if I can. No, go ahead.
Well, hold your thoughts. I think there's an interesting contrast here where they both start out meek, but Dany realizes that Viserys is such a threat and he's such an idiot that she has to off him to protect her child. That's really what it came down to. And Sansa, and then she becomes this fire and blood character. Sansa, and it is said throughout the books, a woman's courtesy is her armor. And she is going to use that custom of what a woman is, but use it to manipulate. And I used to think she wouldn't kill anybody. I think she is going to. She's not, hold on, she's not Cersei, though. A lot of people say she's going to turn into Cersei. No, she's not. She's had a great family background.
She's got to toe that line. She's got to be manipulative and successful, which Cersei was not capable of. Sansa will be more capable than Littlefinger by the end of this, and ultimately I think Roose Bolton.
And for good intentions.
Well, at this point, I think her apathy has removed her good intentions. She is on the cusp with Reek of being vengeful and spiteful, but finding out that his sins have been absolved, or, in a way, she's beginning to be more... I can see her trying to save him.
Who?
Sansa.
Save
and
who?
Reek. If he were about to be killed. I could see her trying to do that.
That's interesting, because in Jane Poole, he has to help Jane. This time, Sansa may free Reek.
I want to add, you said courtesy is a woman's greatest armor. I love the way that is a good combination with what Cersei says, which is what a woman's greatest weapon is between her legs. Armor is courtesy. Oh, that's my friend. But weapon is the sexuality, which I think is a perfect combination, because you want to be this sexual, dangerous creature, but you also want to be courteous and kind and cordial. And I think that's a great... courtesy is your armor, and sexuality is your weapon. I think that's a cool little idea. I'd like to touch on a prediction that I have for the TV show, and maybe the books, about Sansa particularly.
Hold that. This is very brief. I don't think she's apathetic at all.
Apathetic is the wrong word. I'm searching for the right word. She is apathetic to the suffering, not the consequences.
And let me give you the great line. She says, "My skin has turned from porcelain to ivory to steel."
Yeah.
She went as a porcelain doll, and she holds that doll at the end too in Blackwater, and she drops it. That's the end of her innocence. To ivory, where things can hurt her, and it's etched in her skin, and at the end of it, she'll be steel. Because she will be a strong queen.
She'll be queen in the... I don't think there's a question now. She's going to be queen in the North. And with Rick on by her side, helping enforce her rule. And we've got a theme throughout all of this of having people who are in the line after you to rule, who support their previous brethren. You get it with the Blackfire supporting the Blood Raven. You get it, I mean... Seriously, it's throughout all this. There's a lot of them. I'm trying to think of some more, but there's a lot of them.
It's kind of thrown in there all around.
Okay, so here's my prediction, and my mom's going to completely disagree with me, and that's fine.
Probably.
But stick with me and don't interrupt me. In the TV show, Sansa's been raped by Ramsay. To me, it makes a lot of sense for Ramsay to be motivated to not rape her vaginally. Here's why. If he rapes her vaginally, I'm going to quit saying rape because it's
assault.
It's fucking rape, but
I know
it's hard to hear the word rape over and over and over again and not feel like I don't want to watch this. So
assault.
The assault, if not vaginal, means there's no baby, and she's not going to tell anybody because he beat the hell out of her. And what does he benefit? Well, they've already shown us in the books as well that he does not like competition. He arguably killed his brother. And
not in the show.
In the books. And I think it might have been Roose instead. But arguably he killed his brother. Killed his wife.
Former wife.
Former wife. And in the TV show, they've shown that he is not happy about Roose having another baby. And it would make a lot of sense for him to not want to have a child because it's competition. And he could trick his father in this, and we've been set up. Tyrion refused to have sex with Sansa because he didn't want to rape her. His father, Tyrion's father, Tywin, demanded that Tyrion rape her or whatever he needed to do in order to put a baby in her. That's set up for Ramsay to have only assault her only anally. If that is true, and pretend it is, pretend it's true, think about Sansa knows that that's what's happening. She can't say anything about it, but she knows that that's happening. And, by the way, the reason it's motivation also for Ramsay to have Theon in the room when Ramsay rapes her for the first time. Because now he can go, Dad, I'm having sex with her if necessary. Dad, I'm having sex with her. Aren't I, Theon? Reek. And he'll say, yes, you are. If Sansa, now imagine this, Sansa is the showrunners are trying to show us that Sansa's slowly becoming a manipulator, and we don't know that it's anal. So if Sansa were to, at the dinner table, before Ramsay leaves for whatever he's going to do with Stannis, at the dinner table with Walda and Roose and Ramsay and Sansa, Sansa says, I'd like to make an announcement. I'm pregnant. And I think that might happen in the next episode. If she were to do that, knowing that, pretend that we knew that it was anal. We're not going to in the scene if I'm right, which I'm probably not, but fuck it. Ramsay's going to be like, you're pregnant? Holy crap. It'll appear that way, and Roose will have considerations and all that, but truthfully, if Ramsay is thinking, no, you're fucking not. But he can't say anything about it. How do you know would be what he'd say. How do you know? Which they set up in previous episodes because Ramsay asks his dad, how do you know Walda's pregnant? How do you know? And she'd say, I know. And if that's true, we find out later that it was that when she has sex with a hound, that she's never had vaginal sex, however they write it. And it brings to mind, what does it matter? What's the difference between one or the other? It's an assault. The horrible assault, one way or another, really doesn't matter, except that there's no baby possible with the anal. Anyway, and I think it would build up her manipulation stuff. That's one thing about Dany. Dany doesn't have those skills. That's the reason Tyrion is an important person to Dany, which he'll never really get the chance to advise her, at least not in Meereen. But Dany's, and she's being told by Missandei, including and other people, that she needs to make her own choices. That's kind of a fucked up thing to tell somebody. Don't listen to other people. Do your own thing. And that's arguably because she didn't have great advisors. But Tyrion is the piece that's missing, the manipulator, the mind, the brain. And I think that's kind of what Sansa has. But the biggest difference between them is that Dany thinks she's owed it. Sansa doesn't think she's owed anything. Also, there's another parallel between them is the importance of home. And that is, I mean, it's true of almost every character, truly, but particularly these two. Sansa is in Winterfell now in the TV show.
Didn't work out.
And she says, no, this is my home. It's the people that are strange. But is a home when you don't have the right people there? Dany, on the other hand, pictures this home, which you mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. And is she doesn't even know where it is. She doesn't know what happened around. All she remembers is a red door and feeling at peace. And isn't that just a perfect metaphor for a baby being birthed and entering this world of horror? The only thing, the greatest peace we've ever known is the peace of the womb, which we can't even remember. What you got next, Mama?
Next, I'm going to respond to what you said. I don't agree with him on some things. I do agree with him on a fair amount of it. I do think that Ramsay has taken Sansa every which way but at least sexually. I mean, I don't think it's only anal. He's done everything. What I really think is that Sansa is going to trick him into thinking that she is pregnant and that Ramsay does care about an heir. Because I think his ultimate plan is to take Roose out, and Walden might as well fall down a flight of stairs right now because he's not going to let a baby live. He didn't let the former baby of Walda in the books live. So it's not going to happen. Or Roose thinks he's going to kill Walda's child. That's the way it was. I think he does definitely care about an heir. He has been a bastard for so long. He wants a house of his own, and he wants a family of his own. As screwed up as he is, he thinks that's what he needs to do. If Sansa will convince him that she is pregnant, I think he will stop abusing her because he wants that child to live. And then he's going to turn to Miranda, and he may very well abuse her even more, which would create an interesting situation again between Sansa and Miranda in the show if they go that route. But I think she's going to trick him into thinking she's pregnant. And if she has become pregnant by him, then I think she's going to take some Tansy tea, which is an aborticide that was shown in the books that Liza Tully was forced into taking by her dad, Hoster Tully, when she got pregnant by Littlefinger long ago. So one way or the other, I don't think Sansa's pregnant. I think she's going to use it to have some self-protection until she can get the hell out of there. But as far, what was the last point you brought up? I will say this. They are both queens. They have parallel and mirroring, contrasting times. Home we've talked about. Sansa is entitled to Winterfell. And Dany, I don't think she wants the throne. I think she's been manipulated into it through her childhood travels with Viserys and then other events. Remember this. I got
another thing.
Let me finish, please. In season 2, right before Blackwater occurs, Sansa passes the Hound in the hall in the show and says, "Thank you for saving me from the riot in the streets." And he gets all snippy with her like he does, which I don't think he will be with her later. I'm fairly certain that's not going to happen anymore between them. But he says, "You will be glad of the hateful things I do one day when you're queen. And I'm all that stands between you and your beloved king." Remember that line, because that's going to happen.
I agree. We just disagree on how that'll happen.
How it'll happen.
One huge thing, too, between Dany and Sansa are brothers. Dany lost Viserys, arguably killed him herself. Dany also lost Rhaegar. And Rhaegar she holds up as the thing, the true Targaryen, the one that was the way you want to be, a great warrior, a singer, a poet, and all the things you're supposed to be. And even Barristan's like, well, wasn't a huge fan of the fighting thing.
And he wasn't. He was a poet.
Well, we kind of are played up that he is because he won that tournament, and he won. Okay. But the tournament, he plays Barristan at the end. He could easily have, anyway. The idea that there's brothers lost. Sansa's the same way. Sansa ends up losing the brother she kind of holds up as my brother Stark. They say Robb fights where it's thickest, and she lost her brother, but she also thinks she lost her other two brothers. But now in the show,
who are we talking about?
Bran and Rickon. Okay. Sansa and Bran and Rickon. Sansa thinks she's lost Bran and Rickon, but she just found out she didn't. And I don't know if Dany's going to find this out, but I'm of the opinion that Rhaegar's still alive. So is my mom. Yeah. Although she's got to backtrack now that with what I'm about to say. She doesn't think Mance Rayder is still alive. But we both
I think the show has messed with it so much. I'm not sure what to believe.
Tormund is Mance Rayder. Mance Rayder is Rhaegar.
Let me
Hold up. Okay. The idea that if that is true, if Rhaegar's still alive, Rhaegar comes back. Dany, with the exception of wedding her brother, no longer has a right to be queen. He is the eldest,
if he's alive,
and a male. But let's get rid of the male. He's the oldest, and she no longer has the queendom unless she marries him, which I'm not saying will happen.
No. I think that's an interesting point, though, because she holds Rhaegar up on a pedestal, and he's like her far older brother. She didn't even know him. I mean, he was dead or dying about the time that she was born. Sansa, so he's almost like an uncle figure, kind of. Sansa is looking up to Lyanna Stark. She was ostensibly kidnapped, ostensibly raped, which was not true.
And it's the connection between their two families.
and there's a connection between
that is their connection.
That is their connection, you know, because Lyanna was taken by Rhaegar, and you know, if you don't know, spoiler, Jon Snow was their child, Lyanna Stark, and Rhaegar, he is one of the Songs of Ice and Fire in these books. But she's looking up now to Lyanna because Lyanna was a strong Stark. You know, everybody loved her, everybody revered her. She's kind of on a pedestal. She's the only female statue we see down in Winterfell's crypts. And then, you know, in one of those last scenes this episode, she's down there putting a candle in her hands and looking up at Lyanna. So, and if we have to do another contrast parallel, because Lyanna was Sansa's aunt, if we also have to do another parallel, and here's where he and I disagree. The love of Dany's life was Khal Drogo. She will never get over that. That truly was the love of her life. It started out weird, but it ended up being a relationship built brick by brick, like Catelyn said hers and Ned's was. Born in love with each other initially, grew to love each other with great respect and loyalty.
And I think that's Dany and the Night's King and Sansa and Tyrion.
Okay. I think that the love of Dany's life dies. I don't think the love of Sansa's life dies at the end. I think she does end up with the Hound. And I still think that Tyrion has contracted grayscale, and that is he is an asymptomatic character, meaning he carries it, but he doesn't show any symptoms.
Asymptomatic carrier, not character.
Carrier. Did I say carrier? Carrier. But I think it will show much later, and I do think all these gargoyle references, and there are a lot around him in the books, I think he will end up becoming a stone man. But I think he's going to go out as this incredibly good figure. I think people will look up to him. Even a small man can cast a shadow, a giant shadow. So those are kind of our parallels.
Well, in support of Dany ending up with the Night's King, and the Night's King being the amalgam of all the things, I agree with you that as far as Dany is concerned right now in her life, her one true great love was Drogo. Mm-hmm. There's no comparison. Everybody else serves a purpose, but Drogo was her one true love. And the irony of her being sold to him is pretty astounding, considering they ended up falling in love, which is kind of like Catelyn and Ned. It was prearranged. It was a last-minute sort of thing, and it ended up becoming love.
House to house for political alliance.
Until it was taken from her. But stay with me. She hasn't met the Night's King yet, for number one, and he can provide her with a lot of those things. She just has to choose. It has to happen. There has to be that intimacy. And even though he seems ugly, Marjorie talks about some men like this, some women like this, some women like that, some women like ugly men, some women
short men, tall men, fat men, skinny men, hairy man, bald men.
But here's my biggest argument that I think towards how my mom analyzes this. Here's my biggest argument. Dany's vision in the TV show is of Khal Drogo in a tent with a baby above the wall. I don't think Dany can have children. She also can never have Drogo again. But above the wall, right now, there is someone who could make her feel like she has both. Drogo through him, the Night's King, and the baby through being the queen of all of humanity. They are all your children.
How about this?
He can also get the dragons underneath her control.
My first opinion on that vision in the show was that she was going to die once she got above the wall, and she would go into the Nightlands with Drogo. But there's an alternate to that.
What you got?
And that is that if she does join with the Night's King, and if he does submit her, that he could, like the House of the Undying, put visions in her brain, she could live forever thinking she was in that red tent. I mean, he could super work her into thinking any reality.
I don't, and I agree with you, but in my opinion, if that were to happen, it can't be a manipulation. He has to, despite all his power, submit to her and say, I love you. I'm the king, but I want you to be my queen. We will go into that tent when you want us to. I will be Dario for you when you want me to. It has to be a choice, and the reason that he will feel that way about her in this theory is that she looks and arguably acts exactly like the Night's Queen did, that random, in my opinion, prototypical Valyrian, the predecessor to the Valyrians. Race that lived above the wall. And if I can play on that too, since we're down this track.
Might as well go there.
I don't want to make it too complicated because I've got theories that get deep into why it works, and I don't want to get into that in this video.
You've got videos. Let them
They got
know. They got
videos of
plenty
it.
of videos.
The idea is White Walker plus human equals this kind of strange human sort of thing that breeds with humans over time, and eventually you get these blonde-haired, blue, purple-eyed people who are ostracized by everybody else and ultimately leave and become Valyrians. But some of them stayed, and that includes the Night's Queen, so they're related. The fact that they have unique hair is another connection between Sansa and Dany. There's nobody in the Seven Kingdoms that has Dany's hair, and Sansa has red hair, which is a unique thing, and she changes her hair. And Dany has her hair burned off.
Which you're not going to see in the show.
No, you're not going to see that in the show, although we got some interesting stuff going on.
And allow me to say this, just so there's no confusion over this, and Martin has said it, it's not coming from our theories. Dany's not fireproof.
Okay, that's what I was leading to.
Let me say
the idea that
go ahead.
The White Walkers, the White Walker in the scene Hardhome, the most recent episode we watched, the White Walker walks past the fire and pushes the fire. The fire is dissipated by him. It gets put out a little bit.
Quenches, yeah.
Quenches it. What if the reason Dany survived the fire, and I'm not saying I know, I think it's part of the point. You're not supposed to know. It's supposed to be this miracle. It's what Jorah tells Tyrion. Tyrion says, "How can you believe in her?" And he says, "I watched her go into the fire." And Tyrion's like, "Well, so what? What does that mean?" So let's presume it happened. Number two, you could be hallucinating. Dany certainly was hallucinating in that moment.
She went through a fire. Come on. But I want to clarify this. Let me finish this thought. Martin has said she is not fireproof. Now,
the idea that if she's you cut me off actually just now, so let me finish what I was saying. Yes, you did.
Go ahead.
So if the prototypical Valyrians are these part White Walkers actually have ice in them, then maybe the reason she survived the fire is not because she's fire, it's because she's ice. And I'm not. This is fantasy, and the deeper you go, the more actually like fantasy it is, because there's interviews with Martin. Somebody commented, Russ Franz, I think, commented last video we made that Martin has said the White Walkers can actually manipulate ice. But so in a way, I think she actually might. Just a theory. Now, go ahead.
Well, we need Charlie.
You're okay.
Martin has said that Dany is not fireproof. That it was a one event.
He has never. I have not said that.
Okay.
Okay. You pretend he has, and we'll put a citation under this if he has.
Okay. I'll find it.
We'll pretend
I'll find it later. I'll look it up on my phone. But remember that Jon is a Tard as well. He's not full Tard, but he is part Tard. And Jon got burned when he saved Jorah Mormont from the white that went into his room. He lifted up the lantern and he threw it. In the book and in the show, they didn't make a big deal out of it. It shows that he got hurt. In the books, he took a long time to recuperate, and even men on the Night's Watch were asking how it's going. So they can be burned.
In the TV show, he was bandaged up for a couple of episodes.
Was he really?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
They didn't make a point of mentioning it, but he had a bandage around his arm for a couple of episodes.
I can't recall that, but yeah, okay. And I know she picks up an egg. I know she goes into a hot bath. Okay, and I think, and we'll provide a site. I'll try to find it. That Martin has said they may be able to tolerate some things a little bit better, but they're not fireproof. And also, when Dany rides Drogon away, there are some references to her fingertips being blistered, or something was blistered on her. And her hair was burned off.
I like the idea of her getting into the bath hot because she's had such a tortured life. She feels like there's no purpose and she just doesn't care anymore. That the reason she could put her hands on the egg was because she was so callous for not getting used to the riders that she couldn't feel the egg when she lifted it.
There weren't any calluses on her hands when they turned them over, James. Nothing.
In the TV show,
yeah.
You're right.
But let's talk about that, because if James and I have a slightly different theory on it, but if the prototype Valyrians, and what we're talking about there, are folks that were the way back ancestors of the Valyrians, they may very well have a lot of characteristics that the others, and by that I mean the White Walkers, have, as far as abilities to withstand certain temperatures. And again, like James just said, we saw a White Walker walk through fire and quench it. But this isn't a story about the Night's King. It's not a story about that. It's a story about Dany and Sansa. Sansa's magical element, if you can call it that, is her empathetic.
You're talking about this video, not the books?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sansa's. Can you put him outside?
Yeah, if you're okay with that, but it's hot. I don't want to get hurt.
Well, just for a few minutes.
Idiot and stand outside too
Just
long.
for a minute.
Go
He's
outside.
got water.
You know that's what you wanted. Go outside.
But we're taking care of a dog. Excuse us.
He didn't
But-
go outside.
Sansa's semi-magical element is really almost an evolutionary thing as well, of growing up and being involved with the direwolves so deeply. A lot of empathy's going on with them, and if you take empathy to the farthest degree, it's almost a psychic ability to get into somebody's mind and understand their feelings and that kind of thing.
Read their mind and control them based on it.
Yeah. So those are the basics. I think, James, anything else?
No, I think we did a damn good job on that.
Except for fighting.
I know we're rambling.
Bear with
Thank y'all
us.
for watching, and probably make it a couple more. Thank y'all for watching.
Okay, bye.